What's up, everybody? James Ang here. Welcome back to Recession Proof Business Tips. And today I'm going to be talking about a topic that I think if you're in business, if you're in sales, if you're in any work situation, is probably one of the biggest struggles that I know I've had, but I know a lot of entrepreneurs, business people have as well too, which is overcoming certain presentation challenges. I put out a post and I asked people, what are some of your challenges? And I got a bunch of comments on that. So I'm going to address some of those today. So if that sounds like something interesting to you, be sure to subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube and share as well too. And if you have any questions about presentation stuff, then please put them in the comments below. So long story short, if we've never met before, my name is James Zhang. I've been a coach, a trainer, and entrepreneur for the last 14 years. And now I've had the honor of and privilege of speaking on even virtual stages in front of 65,000 people. I've gone on main stages, convention stages. I go on live all the time. I probably do 2 to 3 presentations a day live. But it wasn't always like that. In fact, if you know my story, it's an honor. I've had many people now say, "Oh man, James, you're like a good presenter." Right? Like, and I'm always honored when I hear that, and I almost laugh because if you knew me in the beginning, it was not like that. I was the shyest person in the world. I was so shy. Any shy people, by the way, put a 1 in the comments if you're shy. What's up, Daryl? Excited to chat more in just a little bit. I was like, I don't know if you can beat my shy. I was so shy, I couldn't even order food in a restaurant type of shy. I was so shy that if someone gave a phone call and it said no caller ID, I would not pick up the phone because I'm scared to talk to a stranger, like seriously shy. And then I started to actually get into business and then I had to talk to people. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. And I wanted to be a good presenter because I believe that it's important, it's helpful to have the skill of presentation. You don't need to in business. There's many different ways to leverage resources and teams and stuff like that. But I'm sure you would agree with me that it's nice to have, though, to be able to present, whether that's one-on-one, whether that's in a group, whether that's in, especially now on Zoom meetings or online or making videos. Like there's an art, there's a skill that's very powerful to have. And one of my mentors early on said this, which was that he or she that holds the pen makes all the money. So when I heard that, I got inspired to say, I would love to be a presenter one day. So I remember the early days, I get in front of the room. Did you know for the first year and a half, every time I got off a speech, I would be sweating. I would literally leave a puddle of sweat. Did you know that in the beginning, it took me probably 2 years to learn how to use a facial expression? I used to talk with no facial expressions. Did you know that I used to with hand gestures? I remember there was a time my mentors were like, James, that was an okay presentation, but what are you doing with your hands? It was like I was a crab, no joke. Like it was like stuck. Like I was really bad. In the beginning, I had to take notes on my first conference calls. I would write every single word for a conference call before I did it. Now I just have 3 points and boom, I can talk for 30 minutes. So I bring this all up to encourage you that if you want to, you can become a very impactful presenter. In fact, one of my sub goals is I would love to be able to produce world-class speakers in whatever industry, whatever place that you are, whether that's as a business guru, a top leader, or just as a more empowering speaker in your household, right? So if any of that sounds interesting, let me go through some of these Q&A. And I wonder if we'll continue more on these as well too, because I find it to be a very fun topic because I understand all of the pain. So I'm going to share my screen here and I'm going to go through some of these questions. But I put this on my Facebook and shout out to everyone that responded. Okay, so let me address some of these, right? So Jay Realbit said, his challenge is getting your audience focused and engaged during the entire time. Sometimes it's more difficult to have people fully engaged during webinar presentations or doing challenges virtually. Yeah, That's a real thing right there, right? Hey, if you've ever experienced that or that's a struggle that you've had, put a 2 in the comments, right? Whether it's you presenting or it's you being in a presentation. I'm sure you've noticed there's some presenters that are more engaging and there's others that are not, right? And why what makes someone engaging versus not, especially virtual now? Okay. Well, let me give you a couple of secrets on this. I've been told that I'm one of the more engaging speakers. Here's a couple tips. How do you actually remain engaging? Or maybe you've tried doing a presentation before and then you get lost, right? You're like, oh my gosh, like I feel like no one's listening. I'm just talking. Okay. First thing I'd say to this, and I've had many of those, by the way, but the first thing that makes an engaging conversation is your focus. It's your focus. And what do I mean by that? I've noticed that the times that I'm not engaging is when I'm all focused on me. I'm focused on how do I look? I'm looking at the camera, for example. I'm like, oh, how's my hair? Oh man, how's my, I see my face. Right? I'm worried about me, how I look, how I sound. I'm worried about going through my notes. I'm like worried about me. It's a very selfish focus. The moment that, and here's a big tip just for speaking and presenting as a whole, if you want to be impactful, engaging, converting, make more sales, right? Is speaking is not about you, presenting is not about you, presenting is about who you're talking to. So when you're engaging with somebody, shift the focus. So when I'm talking right now, I'm talking to Diane. I'm talking to Daryl. That's why if you notice, I'm always looking at the time that I'm doing this. I have it on Facebook and YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. You notice, and my apologies, if you notice, I have my eyes constantly going in different places. Why? Virtually, I'm looking at my virtual audience. I'm actually reading the comments. I'm actually seeing the, I'm actually going out there and I have a man that's trying to call me. Let me message this guy. Please don't call me. Oh my gosh. Please don't call my friend on a call. We'll chat after. Anywho, all right. But if you notice, I'm very focused on you. So if you want to be engaging virtually, whether that's one person, a video, or that's 100 people or 10,000 people, the focus is always who am I talking to? Who am I talking to? Now, how else, another little tactic that you can use to create engagement is an engagement. It's just one on one, right? When you do a big presentation, it's simply just a one on one conversation. The best presenters in the world don't speak to a crowd. The best presenters in the world speak to one person. Okay. Have you ever felt that way before? Have you ever felt like you've been in a sermon, you've been in a presentation, you've watched a video, and it felt like they were talking to you, even though it was a crowd, right? Put a me in the comments if you ever felt that way before. You're like, somehow they're speaking to me, like not just to them, but to me. It's like, wow, how did they do that? It's because they have that intention. I'm speaking to one person. So if you're speaking to one person, let's take a presentation into a one-on-one. How do you create engagement? Let me tell you what you wouldn't do. Let's say you're presenting about your product. Okay, if you don't know, I sell these skinny drops things, right? What I'm not going to do in a one-on-one is I'm not going to go to Justin and just talk with no pause. I'm not just going to talk with no question to engage. If it's a one-on-one, imagine literally your person, your prospect, your teammate, whoever you're presenting to is on the other side. If you're to talk to them, let me just use an example, right? If I'm going to talk about this product, I'm going to be like, Justin, I'm curious, do you know somebody that has ever struggled to lose weight? Or have you ever felt like you've had like trouble losing the last 5, 10 pounds? Right? You see, I ask questions. I'm not just going to say things, I'm going to ask questions. And then I'm going to imagine a response, right? He might say, like, I do know people, right? So I'm literally having a conversation in a presentation, right? Justin says yes. right? So whether you actually in a live setting, it's always good to ask questions directly and then expect a response. And based on the response, then I'm going to continue on that. This is how you create an engaging presentation. This is how you make sure through a long presentation online, even with a lot of people, you can constantly keep them engaged. How? I'm simply asking, right? If you don't ask, you don't get. If you want engagement, ask for it. Ask for it. Okay? So I'm asking a question. Now, here's one other point that you can do. Typically, when you make a point, you're going to ask to confirm that they know that point. They've heard your point. You're not just going to give your whole spiel and then at the end be like, what'd you think? In between, you got to get little steps. I use this analogy a lot in communication. I hope this clicks. I want you to imagine that you and someone else are walking down a flight of stairs. Justin says, just kidding, you don't struggle. You can cut weight fast. That's the problem. You're trying to gain weight in the more positive way, right? Awesome. So if you notice, I actually look and I'm actually reading comments because my goal is I'm talking to one person, right? So going back to the analogy, communication is you're walking people down a flight of stairs. You have in your hand somebody that you're literally holding their hand, but they are either blind or blindfolded. What you wouldn't do to lead this blind person down the stairs is drag them and sprint them down the stairs and then look back, be like, hey, so how was that? Right? That'd be almost what's the word? Abusive. You know what you would do? Wouldn't you take one step down, nudge them, guide them, be like, hey, I just took a step, be careful, take the next step. And then you would take another step down, wouldn't you? And then you would look back up, be like, hey, are you okay? And you would do this step after step after step after step until you're at the bottom. And you wouldn't wonder if your person is okay at the end. You would already know they made it to the destination, wouldn't you? The same analogy is communication. The same analogy goes with an engaging presentation. The reason why a lot of people don't feel engaged in their presentation is they're not paying attention to their person. They're not asking questions. They're not confirming. What does that look like? Let's say I make a point. All right. So going back to this skinny drops thing, I asked Justin, hey, do you know anybody that struggles with losing stubborn fat? And he says, I'm okay with that, but I might know of someone. Awesome. And then I make my point. Well, these are hormone balancers and they help you to burn fat faster. And you can do it in a way where it's healthy. But does that sound like something you think could benefit people? You see, I make a point, but I'm also confirming it. I don't just make it and assume they know. One thing that you do in a presentation to be engaging is don't guess if the audience, if your prospect, if your teammate heard what you said. Ask if they heard. Ask if it made sense. You can ask things like, does that make sense? When you do that, it's engaging. Here's a pro tip that I love doing, and I picked this up from some of the best presenters, especially over Zoom. Does anyone else ever get bored on a Zoom? Hopefully never mine. No, but mine can get boring, right? But have you ever gotten bored on a Zoom, either doing it or being on one, right? You know, one thing that keeps it exciting is I'll always ask for engagement and I'll ask people to comment something in the comments. This could be a live, this could be a video, this could be a Zoom, right? So if I'm going to ask them a question, I'll say something like, let's take this just an example now. Let's broadcast it. Right? I'll be like, so instead of saying, hey, Justin, I'll be like, I'm curious, does anybody here know someone, maybe yourself, that has struggled to lose stubborn fat? Put a 5 in the comments if that's the case. You see how what I just did right there? I'm giving the statement, I'm giving the question, and I'm asking the audience. I'm asking the persons to respond back with something simple. And I don't want to make this real hard. I don't want them to type in the chat like a long sentence. Just make it real easy. It's almost like if you're in person and you ask people to raise their hand, right? Hey, in person, you would ask, who here knows somebody that struggles with weight loss, right? You'd ask for engagement. Online, you might not be able to see their hand. Online, you can ask them to comment something. Then you can actually see, based on their reaction, who's actually paying attention. Is this helpful so far? I'm curious. Put a yes in the comments if this is helpful. Do you see what I'm doing? I'm giving you the secrets, man. I'm telling you, this stuff's a lot of fun when you start to understand this. So it's really, really helpful. Apple cider vinegar does help with weight loss. Absolutely. There's many things that can help with weight loss for sure. Okay. Let me go through one final question. These are a lot of fun. So Jay, really good question. Daryl, I know Daryl wants to be a speaker. So that'll be fun to see. These will be good for him to prepare on. All right. So Daryl, good one. All right. Yen asked, challenge, talking into the camera, which you are very good at. LOL. Yes. Okay. Good question, right? Does anyone struggle with looking at the camera? Especially now we're talking about online stuff, right? Does anyone else freak out by seeing their own video? Let's be real, right? Put a 5 in the comments if you struggle with that. Like it just freaks you out, doesn't it? It's like, I don't want to see myself. I think that's a big difference of Zoom or an online setting versus like in person, right? In person, you can't see yourself. In person, you just see other people. You hate it, right? But online, you see yourself all the time. And you're like, oh my gosh, how do I look? Oh, do I really make that facial expression? Oh my, it's like super, it can be frustrating because you're already self-conscious doing a presentation. You're that much more self-conscious when you see yourself there as well too. Okay. So what are some ways around this? Well, number one is this. Just get over yourself. It gets back to the original point. The biggest reason, and I did a Bible study on this. You know, one of the best presenters in the world was Jesus Christ. And you know why? Is everything that he did, he never cared about how he looked. Everything that he did was serving other people. There's a scripture that says, perfect love casts out all fear. So you know the way to get over looking at yourself in the video? Straight up, during that moment, you were thinking about us too much. Love the other person. Love the person behind the camera. Just know that you're not there for you. You're there for them. You're here to serve them. So it doesn't matter how you look. And to be honest, they don't care how you look. You know what other people are thinking? If they're on a Zoom, for example, they're thinking, how do I look? Right? They don't look at you. They look at them. They're looking at their screen. They're like, do I look okay? The reality is we are born selfish, myself included. So if you understand that, it's totally fine. So this is what helps me a lot is I understand that people really don't care about me as long as you're like, now I'm generally presentable, right? Like, I think this is a given that you should, especially if you're doing a presentation or you're doing a speech of some type, you're probably going to be dressed up. You're probably going to make sure your hair is okay. You're probably going to make sure you don't have a big old nose hair popping out, right? If you do, then, might want to cut that. So most people, they really don't care about how you look. They care about how they look. So let's not care about how we look. Care about them. So when you look at someone's eyes, why do people get scared about looking at others though? Because they are scared to connect. Right? The most impactful speakers in the world look you straight in the eye, calm, and there's like love in their eye. Right? Have you ever met someone like that before? I always dress nice and the hair is up. You got to be presentable enough, right? But even if I'm not, I'll show up if I have to, right? But the best speakers in the world are best. Why? It's not because they sound good. The ones that we all feel are the best, it's because you feel like they care about you. And in order to care about someone, you have to look at them. You have to think about them. You have to see them. So get comfortable with just connecting with them. Get comfortable with seeing them. What's up, Nick? Get comfortable with actually caring about people. And when you actually care about someone, I mean, if you're in a relationship, I think this would go without saying. If I go to my wife and I don't look in her in the eyes and I look away and I'm like, babe, I love you. Is that going to fly? Ladies are like, nah, do that again. But look them in the eye with with a look. Jesus, when he was doing his ministry, looked at people. He saw the lepers as them, as people. Other people saw the lepers as lepers. Jesus saw the lepers as people. He looked at them. He touched them. If you know, back in the day, lepers, it was considered unclean to touch lepers. Like, you're unclean. But he touched them and then he spoke to them. Right? So if you want to be an impactful, engaging speaker, get out of yourself, get really key and start to love other people. Pay attention to them. That's why, for example, here's another tip. If you notice, I'm very big on pronouncing someone's name right. Who here has ever gotten your name pronounced incorrectly? Put a 1 in the comments if that's happened to you. Right? Like, and they butchered it. And it was like, oh man, it was like, and you try your best, don't you? You're like, oh, that was a good try. Right? Like, the most in How to Win Friends and Influence People, one of the best books in the world when it comes to relationship building, it was noted that the most important word to someone's life is their own name. So if you notice, here's one thing that I always do is I always make sure, if I can, I'm asking them, hey, is this how you pronounce your name? Hey, is this how you spell your name? And I'll end it with this story. There's too many topics on this. I hope you find this interesting. I did a big presentation this week. Lots of new prospects, lots of teammates, lots of different things. I know. There's Dr. T. What's up? And I had a special guest coming on. These people, they created a system that's been helping our people just win fast and everything. And you could tell your Greek name if you fancied, please do. Yeah, I'll always take on a cool challenge. And so right off the bat, and I felt like I actually was talking with some leaders before. I'm like, is this how you pronounce their name? Like, and we're going back and forth. And I didn't trust my gut on this. So I went with a different opinion of how to pronounce their name. And right in the very beginning of the presentation, I was introducing our guest. I'm like, hey guys, I'm going to introduce you to my good friends, Amy and David Daughtry. That's how I pronounce it, Daughtry. And I had this feeling, I'm like, I don't know if that's how you pronounce their name. So you know what I did? Publicly, if you're there, you can confirm this, right? Publicly, I threw myself under the bus. I asked them, I was supposed to be the presenter, right? I asked them, I'm like, David, I feel like I might be butchering your name. Can you tell me if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly? And he was upfront. He's like, you're totally butchering it, man. I'm like, please tell me, how do you pronounce it? He said, Doherty. I'm like, oh, Doherty, like Dorothy? I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, got it. Got it. It's so important if you want to be an engaging, impactful, converting presenter. The key really is, more of the story, care about the person you're talking about. Perfect love casts out all fear. Know who they are. Have a conversation with them. It's not about you. It's not about how you look. It's not about how you sound. It's about helping that person and delivering them the value and making sure that they're hearing you right there. So hopefully this was helpful. If it was, put a 10 in the comments below. And if you'd like more of this, if you're not subscribed to YouTube, put this plus more. I might do a series on this. Thanks so much. And I will get that name down. I'm going to try this name. Neoclis Christakis Adamides. I think that's probably wrong. So I only got through Jay and Yen's questions. Perhaps I will be addressing more of these as well too. And that's your recession-proof business tips for today. So hopefully it was helpful. If you have any other questions, by the way, speaking stuff, presentation stuff, feel free to comment below, and this could be fun. All right. Well, appreciate your time greatly, and let's all be massively impactful and effective presenters. It'd be nothing but a great compliment to me to know that you were able to be more effective out there. All right. Add an A, but almost perfect. Sweet. All right, guys.